Well, hello again, and welcome again to another episode of Down to Earth, but Heavenly Minded. Well, I'm your host, Risch, and you're listening to our show on internet radio. And today, we're going to be in the book of Daniel, and we're going to be in chapter 1. And I'd like to maybe try to bring you up to speed on what I do and how I do it. Like Today, I set up a outline to the book of Daniel, and I did it earlier today. And today, I'm going to continue on, and I'm going to do chapter 1. And I prepared all the documents today, and I set them up. First of all, I have to do it in a word processor, make all the corrections, and make sure that everything is formatted right. And then I upload them to my blog post, and there I publish them. And once they're published, I can then open them in a Edge browser, and I use the immersive reader to read it. And then I use OBS to record it. And then once it's recorded, then I upload it to my YouTube channel and also some other platforms, Spotify and BitChute and YouTube. And then that's basically how I do the whole show. So, with that said, we're going to continue on in the first chapter of the book of Daniel. And we're just going to move through 12 chapters, and then at the end, we'll have a session on the prophecy of Daniel. So, with that said, I'm just going to go.
The Book of Daniel, Chapter 1, by Daniel C. Snaddon. Introduction. Daniel, whose name means, God is my judge, was a Jewish captive in Babylon. He belonged to a family of high rank. Taken captive at 16 years. He was taken captive by Nebuchadnezzar in the first invasion. There were 3. Daniel spent his whole life in Babylon. 69 years. Although he lived in a sordid and sinful court, he lived a saintly life, so much so that Ezekiel referred to him as a model of righteousness in 16:20-28-23. In addition to Ezekiel, Daniel's contemporaries during the times of captivity were Jeremiah, Habakkuk, and Obadiah. Daniel was one of the most outstanding statesmen in Babylon and probably of all time. He served with distinction under 4 kings: Nebuchadnezzar, Belshazzar, Darius, Cyrus. The events cover a period of 72 years. Daniel died at the age of around 90 years. I will refrain from a comprehensive analysis of the book at this time, preferring to each section as we come to it. All written in times of stress: Daniel the prophet, man of God. Ezekiel, Zechariah, Revelation, Daniel. There are 3 main sections of the book. Chapter 1 is the first of these. Chapter 1 is the introduction. This introductory chapter explains how Daniel was called, prepared, matured, and blessed of God. Apart from Moses and Solomon, Daniel was probably the most learned man in the Old Testament. Prior to the destruction of Jerusalem, Israel had forsaken God's law. Despite the many warnings by the prophets, they elected to continue their godless and rebellious course. Isaiah described their condition. Chapter 1:4-6. The whole head is sick, the whole heart is faint. From the sole of the foot even onto the head there is no soundness in it, but wounds and bruises and putrefying sores. Churches or individuals should not the warning. Daniel was chosen to serve the king after a period of training. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were chosen, too. Verse 8. Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself. The food did not meet the requirements of the Mosaic law. The meat probably was from forbidden or unclean animals. The wine as well as the meat had been offered first to idols. Daniel resolved even at great peril to abstain. The other 3 Hebrew children followed his example. Describe Daniel's request for a 10-day test. Verses 11 to 16. Verse 17 to 21. God's blessing on Daniel and his companions. God gave them knowledge and skill in all learning and wisdom. Verse 17. The king found them 10 times wiser than all his own magicians and astrologies. Verse 80. The narrative stands as an eloquent testimony to the power and grace of God. In every age God is looking for those whom he can use. Daniel was a man of prayer and of uncompromising moral character. God honored him and will honor all who are like-minded. God's plan for the ages. 2 Timothy 2 verses 11 to 16. A study of this plan will necessitate not only a look at the past, but also a look at the future. From the beginning of time people have tried to uncover tomorrow, before they have lived today. By the help of prophets, seers, magicians, astrologers, witches, warlocks, occultism and also by the newest member of this debased family, drugs, people seek to tear away the veil that conceals the future. Housewives and hippies alike are looking for horoscopes for spiritual guidance. 1220 of the 1750 daily newspapers carry columns on astrology. They are read by millions. What of these so-called prophets? There are many frauds among these mediums, but do not be deceived, some do make contact with spirits. What does the Bible say about all this spiritism? 1. Leviticus 19 verse 31, regard not them who have familiar spirits, neither seek after wizards to be defiled by them. 2. 1 Chronicles 10 verses 13 and 14, Saul died for asking counsel of a medium. Heads of state have asked for counsel. Is there any way of accurately foretelling the future? 1 Peter 1 verse 9, we have an absolute, more sure, word of prophecy. Many of the predictions made by the so-called prophets have been wrong. But not one prophecy in the Bible has failed. In the next few Sundays we are going to take some of these prophecies and show you the absolute accuracy of the prophetic word. For this introductory talk let us take the prophecy of the birth of Jesus. There are over 300 prophecies concerning this in the Old Testament. The predictions were not made by one person, but by many, over a period of 1,500 years. Were they correct? Absolutely. Note the difference in methods. 1. Human prophets prophesy on the principle of supposition. 2. Bible prophets prophesied on the divine principle of foreknowledge. Before we can study prophecy we must have a proper understanding of dispensational truth. Dividing the scriptures this way helps us to see God's dealings in the past and in the present. They also reveal His plans for the future. The dispensations. What is meant by a dispensation? A dispensation is a period of time marked out by some special dealing of God with men, imposing upon Him responsibility, and always ending in failure. There are 7 of these dispensations clearly revealed in the scriptures. 1. The dispensation of innocence. Genesis 2 verse 7 to 3:24. Adam created innocent, head over creation, given Eve as his wife, tested, in an attempt to rise and become as gods, they fell. The dispensation ended in failure. A. The introduction of sin. B. The fall of the human race. 2. Unrestrained will or conscience. Genesis 4 verse 1 to 7:6. Man is made a free agent, no restraint. The result. He corrupted and defiled himself so much that God in mercy and judgment ended this period with a flood. Only 8 were saved. As it was, so shall it be. 2 Peter 10 verse 12. By fire. 3. Human government. Genesis 8 verse 15 to 11:9. Man was put in control of the purged earth. Noah ruled, but could not rule himself. He was found drunk. As the population increased, the tragedy of the flood was forgotten. They became godless. They built a tower, Babel. God intervened, destroyed to the tower, confounded the language, scattered the people. Human government had miserably failed. 4. Promise. Genesis 12 verse 1 to Exodus 18. Began with the call of Abraham and continued to the Exodus. Some of the promises were unconditional and have been fulfilled, others are yet future. 5. The Law. Exodus 19 verse 2 to 2 Kings 25. This period extended from the giving of the law at Mount Sinai to the captivity. To the cross. The 10 tribes, northern kingdom, were taken into captivity by the king of Assyria in 740 BC. Judah, Benjamin, Levites by the king at Babylon in 599 BC. 6. The times of the Gentiles. Luke 21 verse 24. Grace from the cross, Pentecost, to second coming to earth. The record of this period is covered by the dream of Nebuchadnezzar. The great image in Daniel 2, vision of Daniel. It began with Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and will end when Christ returns to earth and puts all enemies under his feet. This would be the fulfilling at the prophecy of the stone cut without hands, falling upon the feet of the image. See verse 35. This great event will end this dispensation, also the times of the Gentiles. Meanwhile, Israel has been set aside temporarily. Government and authority have been given to the Gentiles. The times of the Gentiles. The period covered by Daniel's prophecy. The dispensation of grace arises within this period. That is to say that God is dealing with mankind on the pure principle of grace. This dispensation will end when the Lord comes to the earth. 7. The Millennium. Revelation 20 verses 4 to 6 and many OT scriptures. This period covers the personal reign of the Lord Jesus over the earth. 1,000 years. From this survey we see that the age in which we live is the times of the Gentiles. Toward the end. For over 7,000 years God's program has progressed according to plan. Not one promise has failed. Peter did say, "We have an absolute word of prophecy." Surely the God who has brought to pass his predictions will bring to pass future prophecies. This being so, consider what he has said. Behold, I come quickly. Revelation 22. Explain Mark 13 verses 33 to 37. The story of a man who went off on a long journey and gave his servants charge over his household. The doorkeeper was commanded to keep a careful watch for the return of the master. Only the master knew the time of return. So all must be ready for his return at any given time. Mark uses this illustration to urge us to watchfulness, to readiness, for the return of the Lord. At even 6 to 9 p.m. At midnight 9 to 12 a.m. At cock-crowing, 12 to 3 a.m. At morning 3 to 6 a.m. 4 times, watch, is mentioned. He is coming again. His prophecies cannot fail.
The end.